Now, I know that environment, glaciers, climate change, and global warming isn't exactly a hot topic for most because we tend to find it boring. Sometimes it's too complicated. But here is something which is fascinating. This is like time travel. Just humor me. Just humor me while I read from a 2014 article written by Tom Clement for the Pulitzer Center. And I quote, "The Teesta River Basin holds 313 glacial lakes, which flood with historical regularity. Such glacial lake outburst floods, or GLOF, can be expected to overflow the reservoir surrounding Chungthang. Rocks and debris that accompany this glacial flooding amplify the destructive force of a GLOF event. In Chungthang, a sudden influx of glacial debris is likely to compromise the flush gates and discharge capability of the dam." A decade, yes, a decade down the line, exactly what had been written in that article actually happens. This week, an outburst in the South Lonak Lake triggered Sikkim's worst ever flash floods. The outburst from the lake caused the Teesta River in the state to swell to an unprecedented level. Such was the ferocity of the floodwaters that it washed away the 1,200 megawatt Sikkim Urja Teesta Stage 3 dam that was built at a humongous cost of 14,000 crore rupees. Also, in addition, 11 bridges were completely destroyed in Sikkim. As of recording this episode, close to 20 people dead, more than 100 missing, including over 20 army men. More than 22,000 people have been impacted. Thousands of tourists have been stranded. A state that has been left completely powerless. The financial cost is only just starting to be calculated at this point of time. What's worse, you want to know? This will happen again. Repeatedly, especially in the Himalayan ranges. What happened in Kedarnath in 2013 repeated this year in Himachal Pradesh and now again in Sikkim. It will soon happen in another area. The question is, are we willing to accept the inevitable changes in climate and mitigate the disaster that will strike sooner than later? Will we admit that development cannot come at the cost of long-term damage of the environment and at the cost of human lives? And this is not an emotional pitch that I'm making to you anymore. These are hard facts, unfortunately. Let me explain. The first inventory of glacial lakes in Sikkim, Himalaya, was made in 2003 with 266 lakes mapped and 14 of them identified as potentially critical. Similar studies were conducted in 2013 and 2017, and the researchers repeated their warnings. So the warning signs were already there, including from scientists who were working at Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, that these high-altitude glacial lakes can cause flooding if they melt fast enough or under intense rainfall or a cloudburst. While development is a must and hydropower is a clean source of energy in the mountains, the problem is that when you don't listen to science, when you don't accept that climate change is a reality, when you don't factor in a rare but unavoidable instance of glacial lake outburst flood or GLOF event. Now, GLOF occur when lakes formed by melting glaciers burst open because they are unable to hold the entire volume of water. Teesta tragedy is now being termed as a GLOF event. The South Lonak Lake has been identified as the fastest growing lake in Sikkim, with its glacier receding by 2 kilometers between 1962 and 2008 and by another 400 meters between 2008 and 2019. Take a look. Take a look at these images supplied by ISRO of the Lonak Lake before and immediately after the catastrophic event. It is stunning and it is shocking. The pictures captured on September 28th show that the lake held 167.4 hectares of water. However, following the cloudburst and flash floods on October 4th, the area covered by water dropped to an estimated 60.3 hectares. That basically means that over 100 hectares of water came crashing down the mountains, wiping out the massive Teesta Stage 3 dam and, of course, killing scores more. All of this in under 10 minutes. One of the largest hydroelectric power plants in India gone in a flash. What could have reduced the scale of this disaster could have been better planning. more scientific methods being used. While development of hill states is important, the government seems to be really in this race to build bigger and, building faster without taking into account the fragile ecology of the area and the devastating impact that climate change can have on the hydrology of the river basin system. Now, Teesta always has been known as a wild child. It seems that attempts were made to tame this wild child even without having adequate data and adequate studies. And that is a continuing problem that you find in India, is that science is not listened to. Dams are being constructed in the northeast without basic hydrological data. What kind of water flow? What's the kind of sediment flow that can jam your hydroelectric plant? What is that once in a century event that will hit the dam sooner or later? And of course, with climate change, glaciers melting faster, and this is happening. It's hitting places like India and Pakistan. Pakistan, with more than 7,000 glaciers, is already reeling under glacial floods, and India is seeing increasing devastation year by year. This issue is really beyond politics or international boundaries. It's about having the guts to listen to science and making design changes at the local level as the conditions demand. You don't build a skyscraper without studying the soil or the wind load. Then how can you make a dam without knowing the nature and the history of the water flow in that area? And not only a few years, you need decades of that sort of water flow study. Now in Sikkim, had the spillway design of the dam been done better, the dam could have released the excess water that came crashing down. The damage could have been lesser, but right now, when researchers are trying to find out, there is no spillway design data that is available. It seems that it was just done in a rush or done without any scientific study. It seems that we are condemned to making the same mistakes all over again, despite warnings coming in from Mother Nature. A decade ago, in the state of Uttarakhand, unusually high amount of rainfall led to the melting of the Chorabhari glacier and, of course, the eruption of the Mandakini river. The rainfall, the landslides, the flash floods, all that happened together took a massive toll, with Kedarnath Valley being the worst hit. Total death toll, 5,000 plus. Damages, well over $500 million. But nothing much has changed on the ground since then. Same unplanned, haphazard construction that you can see in the hills, mismanaged tourism, intensive mining of the fragile Himalayan ecosystem. So much has the construction activity been that the town of Joshimath has been sinking and now has been declared out of bounds for habitation. We did an entire episode on this on our main Deshbhakt channel. I'll leave the link below if you want to have a look at that. Even the most development-oriented of us cannot overlook the data now that is staring at our faces. Climate change is real. There is lesser snowfall, more rainfall. More rain is equal to more deluge and destruction. Just this year, extreme weather conditions in Himachal Pradesh led to 300 people dying, 10,000 crores in damages. Sikkim, a possible death toll of over 100. And of course, the losses would be in tens of thousands of crores. No one is saying stop all construction activity. No one is saying go back and live in a cave. But one is definitely trying to say is that it's time that we start listening to science, that we understand the price of uncontrolled, unbridled development, find a middle ground that is sustainable, and a ground that takes into account things that are getting worse with time. Only then we'll be able to minimize this loss of life and damage to infrastructure that, by the way, is built with taxpayer money. But that will only happen when citizens also get up and start asking some tough questions to the government. When they will know better about projects that have been executed without proper studies, when they demand accountability. Till that does not happen, I don't think anything is going to change. So will we again see images of more disasters and more breaking news of hundreds of people missing? It's basically up to you and me. So have a think about that. That's all we have from Not the 9 p.m. news tonight. Good night and good luck.